I'm Christopher Smith. I'm a Durham School of the Arts graduate and a rising freshman at Durham Technical Community College. The topic that I chose to do my project on is about redlining and its effects on Black wealth. So my overview tonight, I'll be going over my motivation, my background information, the terminology, my research question, my methodology and my limitations, findings and conclusion and future directions for this project, as well as acknowledgements. My motivation behind this project was that I've grown up in neighborhoods, in gentrified neighborhoods, and I know people that grown up in these neighborhoods that dealt with poor issues. And I like to believe that where you grow up plays a huge role in who you become or in who you grow to be. So basic information on redlining. It's a historical and geographical practice that was done in the 60s where lending marketers or house lenders would mark areas on a map red, and the term redline comes from these areas that were red, and most of these areas consisted of Black people. So some basic terminology. Redlining is a form of housing discrimination, and housing discrimination consists of illegal practices and unfair treatment done by the renter or buyer, renter and buying a home. Economic inequality refers to the disparities among individuals, which includes wealth and income between Blacks and whites, which leads me to my prominent piece of my project, is the Black and white wealth gap, which is the comparison of Black and whites and their debts and assets. Study shows that whites have more assets and debts than Blacks. So my question tonight is, how has redlining affected Black generations and their wealth? In my research, I used many scholarly articles from JSTOR, Google Scholar, and Duke Library to find articles about redlining and the Black-white wealth gap. My research consisted of the key terms on the previous slide, and my limitations for this research was that I didn't target a specific place or a prominent area where redlining was, but I was talking about redlining itself. Those are my findings, the effects on redlining, housing discrimination, and the Black-white wealth gap. The effects of redlining lead to unfair investments in these neighborhoods. So the unfair investments were things like limited access to education, limited access to grocery stores, and neighborhood watch. The limited access to education will lead to bad decisions and a lack of guidance in these neighborhoods, which will eventually lead to violence. Housing discrimination, it has forms to it. It's specifically based on race. It's rent rates based on race. And lenders will charge higher fees for those who have children, and some of them will refuse to show homes in certain areas. Housing discrimination dates back to the 1940s or the early segregation, and it sparked when World War II had passed and the GI Bill was passed, meaning that veterans after the war were guaranteed housing, but Blacks didn't get this privilege. As a matter of fact, no private housing was funded to Blacks even before the war, so this caused areas in many redline neighborhoods to be crowded with Blacks. Housing discrimination targets racial, gender, or disabled groups that we are still facing today, and Black families suffer the most out of all these groups. Which leads me to my prominent part of my project, the Black-white wealth gap, racial inequality. This diagram right here is a percentage representation of the wealth gap, and it basically explains how blacks are, it seems to be we're always behind, especially with the wealth and the income. But this is specifically talking about wealth and what our assets. Blacks average at least 160K less than the white household. And even if we were making the same earnings, we would still be ways behind. The black-white wealth gap contributes to family structures, which is how family members live in the household, how many family members are in the household, and the family background, which is how family members live in the household. These are important because they differ by race in the U.S., and it contributes to the wealth gap. The wealth gap is an example of economic inequality for black people because we work and still receive less earnings compared to white people. To conclude my project, there is a relationship between redlining and ability to acquire mortgage loans. Since owning a property is a type of wealth investment, the lack of access to buying homes contributes to the black wealth white gap. For my future research, I want to look at specific areas where redlining is prominent to see where it is prominent. I would like to thank the Hank and Billy and Suber Aaron Young Scholar Summer Research Institute for letting me be a part of this program. The Samuel Cook Du Bois Center and Duke University for allowing us to use your campus. And I would really like to thank my teachers and instructors because y'all really helped me with this project. It was a lot of work to put into it, a lot of research to make concise, but thank y'all. Are there any questions?
Oh, thank you. Did you find in your research, I saw that you talked about the redlining, but did you find any evidence in your research that the valuation of the homes on the other side of the red line were affected?
No, my scope of research didn't cover that.
Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you.